people actually watch.
They
Hey, Kristen, we're testing audio. Can you talk for a second for me?
She hasn't moved since she's very good.
Hello. How's the audio?
Okay, yep, we can hear you. Are
I'm
we
gonna finish putting on my,
Yes or no.
I'm gonna finish putting on my face. I'll be right back.
Okay, thank
But I
you.
can't see how many are watching. Do you know how many are watching?
I can tell you in 1 second. I sure can. So if the battery starts running well, here's your other outlet right there. If it starts going to sleep, which it shouldn't when you're in Zoom, you just move this around. I have the chat up. Do you want the participants up? She's putting everybody into, she'll put everybody into a waiting room maybe beforehand. She's probably listening to us laughing at me.
I'll plug it in for you.
So they're there.
Plug it in and get it over with.
As soon as you sit
There.
there.
Oh, look, there's somebody else. Hello, welcome for joining us. Just getting them set up.
This is updating, so, okay.
Yeah. They can hear you.
I can hear it.
Okay.
Can't hear anything.
Is it up?
Can't have a voiceover.
Hello, everyone. We got not quite 10 minutes to go until we start, and we'll get going then.
You need to close the curtain doors?
Maybe.
Who's up first? You're on mute.
Rich and Ross, it makes me nervous when I can see you laughing, but I don't know what you're saying. I'm gonna unmute you. This is not fair.
Boom.
There you go.
We unmuted? Okay. Yeah, you should be nervous with, we're just one stooge shy of the three of us.
What?
For the Three Stooges.
Oh, stooge. I think it's student. You got Christy in there, don't you?
No, she said just leaving so we can take our mask off. Everything looks great out on the tables. Everything looks, and the judging is going very well too. This is fantastic to see all this.
Thank you for doing it. Exciting. It's exciting to have something, to have some in-person judging happening.
Yeah, it is. It's great to see again. It's great to see, and to have a number of quality judges coming in and doing this, and we have a lot of quality work out there too. Very gratifying, and to see the people responding, you know, with coming to Zoom meetings is phenomenal. Happy, joy, joy. Happy, joy, coffee. You have any questions for us, Kristen, or are we just winging it?
Well, I was thinking of just winging it since it's a Q&A for beginners. You know, maybe we'll start you off by asking a little bit about how you got started, and then leave it to folks to ask questions. Or
Cool.
if everybody's shy, I have some questions in my pocket I can pull out. But
I should have brought a copy of my book along too to show that.
yes,
I can go steal one off of the rack.
do it.
Okay, I got to unplug.
Where is it? I'll go
It'll
get
go
it.
around the corner.
Can I do that?
Yeah, you can do that
Nobody will get me.
if they get you.
Just bring me back.
No, I think it'll be fine. This is great having a flunky. Go get him, Ross. We have been doing a magazine article for Wildfowl Carving for the past 2 days. We had photographed it quite a while ago, and we were doing all the captions right now. So it has been fun and it has been ugly. So that's the one. Thank you. Thank you very much. There we go. We can even plug that.
Oh, shameless plugging.
It is. Well, it's going to bring money for the ward. That's what we're all about.
I won't say no to that.
Yep, I'm into that.
Should I leave and come back in?
There we go.
Bruce's wife's helping.
That's right. Bruce's wife probably has to help. Bruce isn't hearing us.
Good.
Kristen, can you hear me?
I can.
I can't hear anything. I think I'll try going out and then coming back in.
Okay.
Kristen, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah.
Can you? Could,
Absolutely.
maybe we'll just log off and leave. And what time check we've got?
I've got 9:58 on mine.
Me too, me too. All right.
Cool. I was told to turn mine off.
Take this 2 minutes to plug my computer in. Might be
So that's
smart.
what I just did with Christie's. Which one was off?
Oh,
I just turned the volumes down. Okay. One good thing is you got both of those thingies for you. Happy.
Oh, no, Rob's getting one.
I know. Carl never said a word, so snooze, you lose.
Coming to me now.
Mhm. It's pretty good for $300 plus shipping.
I tell if the audio is working now,
I can hear you fine.
but I can't hear you.
Wow.
Sorry. We can see anything we want about it.
Sure were.
It'd be on our side, but
I don't believe it should be on his. Kristen, that would be on Bruce's side, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Okay. You hear anything, Bruce?
Bruce. Hello.
Doesn't seem like it.
No, I'm definitely thinking not. Here. See, you can just barely see the question.
Without go up, Rich, with me.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Kristen, let's get it.
Let's do this. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really excited to kick off this virtually modified Ward World Championship with you all. It's such a strange year, but I'm really glad to see you all joining us. Thank you. For those of you who have not met, I'm Kristen Sullivan. I'm the executive director at the Ward Museum, but I'm not the person you're here to see, so let me introduce those folks. We have here with us Rich and Ross Smoker, and Ross is joining us today from Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Rich from down the street from the Ward Museum in Marion Station. And I'm guessing most of you here know these folks, so they don't need much introduction. But both of them, grew up carving hunting decoys, I think, with their father, and have grown to become award-winning, champions at the Chesapeake Challenge, Ward World Championship, and other contests throughout the country. Rich has gone so far as to become a National Heritage Fellow named by the National Endowment for the Arts in 2019, which is the highest honor that a folk and traditional artist can get in this country. It's pretty amazing. So we're really fortunate to have both of them here today to share some tips and tricks for beginners. I'm going to, I think, start this by just asking them a question, but then I will turn it over to all of you. So as you have questions, there's a few different ways you can interact. You can just speak up if you like, if there's silence, and ask your question. There's also a chat feature in Zoom toward the bottom of your screen. If you're on a computer, there should be like a little speech bubble that says chat. And if you click on that, a box will appear where you can type in a question, and I'll be monitoring that chat function there. So if you'd rather type, I can ask questions on your behalf. There's also at the bottom of your screen a little smiley face with a plus that says reactions. And on there, you can raise your hand. So you can also do heart emojis if you love what Rich and Ross are saying, or clapping hands or whatever. But if you want to raise your hand, you can do that, and then we'll call on you. So just be like a classroom. So feel free to, again, ask questions in the chat, raise your hand, and we'll call on you, or speak up. But I will kick this off by just asking Rich and Ross if you could each tell me a little bit about how you got started carving, and yeah, some of the things that really helped you when you first started to get going. And I'll let you take that in whatever direction you want, and we'll go from there.
Yikes.
Yikes.
No, you're older.
Yeah, you're uglier.
Yeah. Okay. I started because of the family tradition. My dad carved, of
It's the
course.
family business.
My brother carved, of course. So I just got dragged into it, kicking and screaming. So that's why I do it. In my feeling, it's the best hobby. You know, you're actually carving a legacy. You know, you're leaving stuff.
Well, with your, it's an avocation too.
What?
You're making money at it.
Oh.
You sell your work.
Oh.
Oh, lunkhead.
Yeah, so I got started. I make mostly gunning decoys, and I carve things with feathers. That's what I tell everybody. So, so that's what I do. Rich, you're the big one.
I was born ignorant and been losing ground ever since.
Yeah.
I started when I was in high school. Our dad was the industrial arts teacher at the local high school, and I needed a rig of decoys. So we made them in the wood shop. I would go down there, I'd steal out of third period French and go down and make decoys rather than parlez-vous français, which, I didn't need anymore, for sure. But it became a labor of love, and realizing the first time I ever walked into the Ward Fall Expo in 1971, I knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I've been carving for over 50 some years now, and enjoying it very, very much. And I also would like to thank everybody for their participation on this Zoom meeting. As chairman of the board of directors of the Ward Museum, Ward Foundation, we certainly do appreciate you turning out for this sort of thing on a Friday morning. We really appreciate all of the support that you're giving us in both turning out for this meeting and also entering birds in our competition. We can't be together, but we can be together virtually. So let's have fun. Let's learn something about carving. All right.
Thanks, guys. So does anybody have a question, maybe a project that you're working on that you could use some advice on, just general questions about carving or competition? And this is meant to be a beginner session. I know some of you are seasoned carvers, so I think they probably can ask questions running the spectrum. But if you've got something really, even very basic, this is the place to ask it. So feel free to speak up. I've got something in the chat here, but it's going to take me a sec to read. So if somebody wants to ask a question in the meantime, go ahead.
You want to ask a question?
Well, yeah, why am I here?
Yeah.
Let's see, I can see that question. Anybody have anything they want to cover right away? We can certainly cover that. Before we get into telling you all about the tools and equipment that we like to use the most of.
Well, how about I'll read the question in the chat. Peter says that I'm still very new, one duck under his belt, but very eager. It says issue in his location, Nova Scotia, Canada, and COVID restrictions. He's having issues finding quality large dry wood to carve. He says that he does, however, have a large supply of quality clear pine in 2x6, 2x8, and 2x10.
Wow.
He's looking to build mostly gunning decoys, so he's wondering if layering this wood is a good idea, and how would you do so? 2 pieces or 3?
Oh, and layering, that is actually a very good idea. If you're going especially to hollow them out. And what you would do is you would, let's say if you're going to make just a small gunner, a 2x8, let's say, would work fine. Layer 2 of those, you have 4x8. You screw it from the bottom, cut it out and carve it. Then after you carve it, the body, you pop it apart, hollow it out, then re-glue it back together. Now you have a hollow bird and you used up your 2x8 wood. So, and then you just have to make sure you have a good glue seam, use good waterproof glue. And I use, after the waterproof glue, I think I use a lot of Gorilla Glues or heavy duty epoxies, waterproof epoxies and stuff. So, and then I'd put Bondo over that seam after it's all dry, and I route it out a little bit and then put Bondo over the seam to make it smooth again. So that'll work. That would work great, especially if that's what you have and it's dry. No, nothing worse than carving out a piece of wet wood and having it dry while you're carving it and check all over.
Yeah, we both started out using white pine. We both lived in central Pennsylvania before I moved away. And white pine was our wood of choice. So I think it's phenomenal. If you can get it, you can, even if you get it wet, you can rack it, making sure that you have airflow around it, and it dries generally about an inch to an inch and a half a year. So you can, suitably in 2 years, you can have a dry piece of wood, just air drying it.
Explain racket, Rich.
You would put spacers between each board so that airflow would mingle around each piece of wood. So you would generally use like an inch by inch board, an inch by inch stick rather, between each board. If you would rack wet white pine together, it does a thing called heating, and it'll turn blue. And what happens is it's a fungus that sets into it right away. And it will turn the wood blue, and it makes it very hard. So you don't want to be encumbered with that. And it's also anytime you have fungus in wood, i.e. spalting, which turns black, and or, with this blue pine, it's a respiratory problem. So you want to stay away from spalted woods if at all possible. And I would agree with Ross. I use resorcinol glue, which is a mix of water and resorcinol glue itself reconstitutes. And I also use heavy duty epoxy, 2-ton epoxy. Mix that together and put them together after you've hollowed them out. And that's fantastic. If you have a use of white pine in those dimensions, you're in Fat City, not a problem.
Excellent.
If that answers the question, if not, right back in. We'll if we can't dazzle you with brilliance, we'll try to do it with BS. So boom.
Does anybody else have a question right now?
Ross, if nobody has anything at the moment, you want to talk about how you start with what tools do you use?
Okay, when I start carving, the most important thing you got to use is a pencil. Pencil is the number one. You want to make sure you have your center line so you can keep symmetry around your blank.
Is that the same as symmetry?
Symmetry.
Potato. Okay.
I don't speak falutin like you. But the pencil is the most important thing. And everybody carves differently. That's the beautiful thing about this carving. If you use hand tools, it's going to take a little bit longer, but you have more control. You use power tools, it takes you a little less time and it's a lot more dirty. So it all depends how you want to do it. I carve a mixture. I'll rough things down with the power tools, and then I go to hand tools because I like to work the wood. So hand tools are just basic, the knives and draw knife for bodies.
Yeah, don't you generally start with draw knife by roughing down the block after it
That's
comes
the
off
body.
the bandsaw?
The body I do. The head I put my guidelines on. I'll rough it down with the Fordham, round the back, wedge it down in the front to the bill. And then I go clean that up, and then I go knife it. The body, I draw knife, and then I go to the grinder.
Mm-hmm.
Trim on the bandsaw, draw knife, and then I go to the grinder. Now use spoke shape. I'm not a spoke shape guy.
I pretty much do the same thing. I'll trim it on the bandsaw to the size that I want it, cut it out, and then I'll tilt the bandsaw table and I'll trim off a big hunk of wood that's not needed in the carving. I don't use a draw knife as much as I used to. I have gone to a hatchet. I take the hatchet and chop off the extra wood that's on both the body and the head. And then I'll take a spoke shave and I'll smooth those facets off. before I switch over to, if I need to, power tools. And primarily, I have switched a lot to doing a lot of power carving because of carpal tunnel, and had those fixed, and now my hands don't go to sleep. But I find it just as easy, making a living doing this. Is I like to use power tools, and I love using knives, to do my shapes. Some of the knives that I particularly love to do. Well, let me give you an overview of some of the power tools I love. These are Fordham tools. This is I don't know what you would call it.
Cone, saber cone.
Well, duh, I know what that is. Yeah, but it's a very fine, coarse, very fine teeth
yeah.
on it. And I like using the fine teeth rather than the real heavy teeth. And I use a cylinder the same way. This is a 1/2 by 2 inch, and this is an 1.5 inch cone. These are my primarily power tools that I use in my Fordham tools. If I'm doing something with, well, why don't you tell them what you like to use first?
Well, I use the heavier ones. This is
Is that a saber?
a saber black, but now this one here is my cork bit. This one here is worn out. This is what I use. Or if I'm making cork burr.
Okay, so you use a worn out burr on your cork rather
cork.
than a fresh one because of its being aggressive.
Yeah, but on
Okay.
wood, I use the big aggressive ones. And then I also use, like Rich said, the cone, and I use a little cone
Hold them up
to get into, I am.
so you can get right to the, like a virtual thing.
Okay. I use a little cone for getting into necks and tighter areas.
Uh-huh.
So that's basically what I use, 3 bits, When you become a carver, you become a collector. And you collect a lot of things, bits one of them, knives are another, wood, paintbrushes, everything. There's a lot of stuff out there to use. So that's just what we use. So not saying it's right or wrong, but that's what we use. And then knives.
Yeah, that's something that we both started with was using a knife. The first knife I ever bought was $3.95, and I thought that, I had the best tool in the world.
Dad gave me a $5.95.
Wait a minute, Dad gave you a knife?
Yeah, he liked me best.
Man.
But Dad gave me a knife. It was a German knife, and I still have it.
That's it. Me too.
Still have it. But now I use a variety of shapes.
Yeah, talk about the shape of your knife and what you use it for.
Well, this is a longer knife, and it's sharpened on the bias, which means it's sharpened on the curved side. So, and I use this for pushing. If you're carving, and you're pushing.
Hold it up so they can
Like
see
that,
it.
if you're pushing the knife a lot. I also use this, if you look, when you're carving, you do a scoop cut, like for eye channels or necks and stuff.
By
So
rotating your hand.
by rotating your hand. That's what I use these longer ones like that for. The shorter blades like this, I'll use for detail work.
Now,
It'll work.
which is your sharp edge on that blade? So
This
they can
is
see
the
it?
flat edge. The flat edge is sharp edge.
Okay, the long flat.
Yeah, and then,
Okay. And that you use that primarily on detail work?
detail work, and then, around bills and around eyes, I'll use this. This is sharpened on the round side again.
Okay, that's a drop point. It's
That's a
called.
drop point, and then this is the same thing.
That's a drop
And
point.
it's sharpened. I like them sharpened on the bias because I like to push a lot. I've seen them more control like that. So
So those are your favorites?
those are my favorites that I brought. Now, again, you become a collector. I probably have 40 knives.
Oh,
Yeah.
and you're a slacker.
Yeah. So,
Amazing.
but I also got all Dad's knives. So.
I knew they went somewhere.
Guys, we have a question in the chat. Can I interrupt about you?
Please.
Yeah.
All right. So Mark asks, he says, when making heads and bodies separately, would you try and make a glue joint, or would you always fill the joint with a filler? Says, what glue would you use and what filler texture as well? Says, I've seen cracked joints on older birds. Do all joints crack evenly? Explain the process, please.
You're up. It's cracking is you.
Oh, yeah, no, it's fracking. That's where you get gas. I think any joint on a decoy, now when I say decoy, something that's going to be floating is very important. It's paramount to get a good bond and use the best material you can to bond it together. When I do a decoy, I make sure that my neck seat and the head seat are very flat so that they will join each other. I don't like to use glues that will foam. Some of your polyester, the polyurethane glues, like Gorilla Glue, that sort of thing, because I think it pushes things a little bit more than I want. If I'm doing a hollow bird, what I will do is I will take my epoxy, waterproof epoxy, the 2-ton epoxy, mix that, and it sets up in an hour, but you really can't really totally work it for 24. But it sets up in an hour, and when it's set, I'll run a screw up through the very center of the bird's body. And that way it'll lock it fast. There's, and I'll talk about it later, but it's the book I wrote here this year talks about that in one of the chapters, putting them together. I make sure that I've got a good bond, and with that screw running up through the inside, it'll tighten it down. Now, you can also, if you're doing a solid bird, you can run either a screw and or a dowel rod down through the top of the head or up through the body into the head. If I'm doing it that way, what I would do is I'd make sure that my neck seat, my head joint are flat. Put my epoxy in. With one cravat that I will do with the epoxy is mix sawdust in it. That way you have dextrose into the epoxy. Dextrose is wood dust, and that will take up the seam rather than using some sort of filler inside. I'll put that in, and then I'll let that set, and then I'll drill a hole for the dowel rod to come down through the top of the head. So the reason for that is I'm not putting any pressure or stress on the woods themselves. I'll put the dowel rod down through the top, and it has no stress on it. It's going to be in the bird itself, but you've drilled it after the glue is set. And then I'll glue it in place, and then I'll put some filler over top. What I like to do around my neck joint and that dowel rod is I'll use Bondo high performance wood filler. One company that I worked for making models for hunting decoys required me to use this Bondo, and I found out it works very, very well because there's a lot more talc in it. So it smooths out, it feathers out, and it sands very, very smooth. And I have not had a problem with any cracking, due to usage in water, or I even use it on some decorative birds. I carved most of my eyelids on it, so it works really good. And I hope that helps you.
Well, he wanted to know about finishing the bird if you wanted to seal it also.
Oh, I'll seal
You
it.
seal it over top of it. He's using acrylic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's another question from the same gentleman, says.
Are we doing a 2 for sale here or what?
Yeah, and then we have more questions coming up. Woo-hoo.
boy.
Says that he uses acrylic paints and Finn's using water only. So should he seal the finished bird upon completion of the painting? If so, with what? Is it necessary? He's heard that water damages the paint bond. Is that true? And what do other carvers do? Products in the US may not be available in the UK. Noted.
Okay. You want to field it?
Most of the time, like with gunning birds, the birds that I'm going to use
In a hunting situation?
in a hunting, yeah. I'm sealing them with a spray. Right now I'm using Krylon flat. You have to actually go in and ask for it. They have Krylon matte, Krylon satin, but this is Krylon flat.
That might not be available in the UK.
Yeah, I don't know what's available in the UK.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I have never been.
Well, yeah, you use that, and
Anything like that, what's a liquid that he can use?
well, what I was going to recommend is I like to use a lot of satin or matte. What am I thinking of? Glosses that come from like Golden or
Oh, the
any of
varnishes.
the varnishes. And I will take them and mix them. I'll cut them with water, which they are a water base, of course, and could go over your acrylic. And I'll cut that. What I do is I'll maybe cut it half and half water, half material, and I'll rub it in my fingers. And if I can get little beads rolling up in my fingers, I'm looking for adhesion. And if I can get that adhesion in my fingers, then I can put it on my bird. And it works really well for that sort of thing. I'll paint that with a number of coats. But one of the biggest things about using acrylic birds is you have to let the paint dry. It's a plastic paint. and it needs days to set. If you take it and hair dry it right away, what happens is you dry the external layer of it, but inside it's still viable. This is why sometimes you see crazing on decoys and alligatoring. The skin, what happens is the base coat is dry and the upper coat hadn't dried when it was finished. So hopefully that'll work.
Yeah.
Two different ways.
Right. Yep. Hopefully
Thank
that'll.
you. A question about what was the name of the product with the high talc?
What was the product? Your product with the high talc?
Oh, high talc. It's a Bondo. It's made out of Bondo company. It's high performance wood filler. It's a two-part wood mix, not a wood mix, but it's just like the stuff they use on auto bodies, except it has more talc in it. One of the companies that I get it from Lowe's. The Lowe's dealership carries it a lot. So it makes it easier for me to get a hold of that way.
Thank you. And then another question, going back to your tools, what does it sharpening on the bias mean, and what do you use to sharpen your knives?
Okay, sharpening on the bias is sharpening, like you have this knife. If you grab this knife, most people are going to think the straight edge is the sharp edge. And if you can see here, I'm rubbing it, it's not. The sharpening on the bias is sharpening the curved edge of the knife. Okay, so that's what I like, so you can push them a lot. And you also do those scoop cuts. And for sharpening, just a diamond stone, little oil. But the main thing is
No oil on a diamond.
no oil in the diamond.
No.
Ooh. I gotta quit spitting on it.
Yeah, there you go.
But on diamond stone, and then after I have it sharp, you make sure you strop your knives, and stropping with a leather strop every 20 minutes to a half an hour of carving. So that keeps things sharp.
Yeah, the best thing to do to keep a knife sharp is don't let it get dull. And it's important to strop it every half hour at the most.
At the most,
At the
yeah.
most, right.
So when you're sitting there and you want to take a break, just drop it down a couple strokes and going, just it works out great.
Cool.
Yeah, I hope that helped.
Yep.
Yep. So
All the questions from the chat right now. If anybody has questions and wants to unmute themselves to ask, you're welcome to do that.
Well, until we're waiting, Ross talked about his knives. Let me tell you about mine. Since I've had carpal tunnel, what I have switched to is this one. This is a Scorp. It's a bent blade. Some people call it a Swedish hook. I love it because I can hollow with it, and I can cut straight with the back edge of the blade. And the very hook on the front is I can do a lot of hollowing with it. And I can do concave, I can do convex with this one blade. And it works very, very well. Once you learn how to sharpen it, which I finish it with, it's no different than using a hand chisel, a hand gouge. What I do is I'll take 600 grit emery cloth and I tape it around a dowel rod so I can sweep the inside of my curve to keep it sharp. Another one of my favorites is this drop point. It's a long drop point, and I do a lot of concave work with it, just like Ross was saying, is you can take your hand and you can get a range of motion of 180 degrees with that blade, just by bending your blade and your hand. Another one that I dearly love is this is one that I had designed and it's manufactured, with my name on it. Which shameless self-promotion there, wasn't it? Did you like that? Okay.
yeah. Still, Bobby Swain makes it better now.
Yeah. This is just a detail point. It's about 7/8 of an inch long, and I love to use this little blade on doing bills, transformations from bills into heads, and I do a lot of work with this little knife. And they work really well for me. And I probably have 70 or 80 knives in my collection. A lot of real long blades, and a lot of them that I have developed and are manufactured by Knott's Knives. It all depends on what you get used to, what you like.
Yeah,
That's the
main thing
biggest,
is
that's the
actually
biggest
using
part of it, for sure.
You actually, taking the time to use them and learn how to, because carving is, is just the mechanics of manipulating your hands to the wood and removing wood.
All right. And you take away everything that doesn't look like a duck or a bird or whatever you're making.
Sure.
Sure,
It's that easy.
Yeah, I didn't bring my hatchet, but I use a Swedish-made hatchet that sharp, and I make it just like a chisel. I'm right-handed, so my hatchet head on the left-hand side of the head has been filed flat, so that it'll act like a chisel. The right-hand side is still bent like a hatchet would be, and what that does is it cleaves the wood away from the area that you're chopping. I work on a chopping block at home, and I find I can remove a lot of wood in the meantime. It just and all different types of wood too. I think the last bird that we did was we're doing an article for Wildfowl Carving magazine on carving together, doing a rosy-billed pochard, and Ross used white cedar and I used jelutong from Malaysia, and all different species I can carve with my hatchet and draw knife and spoke shave. So I mean, it works out really well.
How do you recommend somebody get started with a hatchet?
Yeah.
Well, you go to the circus and see the guy throwing them at people. Yeah, that's the tip.
Rich, because my hatchet hangs on the wall.
He's a scared. How do you?
Don't try to take too much. Right?
Yeah, the biggest thing is people try to do too much. I have found, and every class that I teach, we do a lot of draw knife work. And what I have told people is we do the body in 4 increments, on the top of the body. We put it in a block in the body, in a vise, and we'll do the left-hand side from the middle of the bird forward, and we'll do the right-hand side from the middle of the bird forward, and we'll turn it and do the back end the same way, left and right. People have a tendency to try to take off too much wood right away. I find that if you're going to use a hatchet, the biggest thing is when you buy a hatchet new, a lot of times it's beveled, and what you have to do, if you're right-handed, you have to take one side of it flat, so you would have a chisel point, chisel side that would dig down along the side of the bird, and then the other side cleaves the chip away. It's no different than the way a knife is built, so that you can get an equal chip length and moving the wood away from it.
You got to remember too, when you're hatcheting, you're not holding back all the way on the end. You're choked all the way up, and your hand's right next to the head of the hatchet. So you're not trying to get all that momentum or leverage. You're just working down on the block.
Yeah, I think to answer that question, the easiest way, Kristen, is to have a visual idea of what you want the bird body or the body or whatever you're making to emerge as. If you can see the finished product in your head, your hands and your mind can generally go to it and trim it the way you want it. If you don't have an idea, you're going to end up taking off more than what you really need. We have a number of people that contact us on chat rooms, and we're on together, about how to do this, and then they try it and they take off too much wood. And most people are afraid to take off wood, so it's gratifying to see people take off too much. But it's also, we have to change the species as we go along because they've taken off too much wood. If that helps, hopefully. Anybody have questions? We're paid by the question here. So
feel free to unmute yourself, or again, you can type in the chat or use the raise hand reaction and we'll call on you, whatever you prefer.
Sure. To back up some of these principles that we're talking about, this is one reason I came up with this book. It's available from the Ward and from Wildfowl Carving. Counterfeiting to counterfeiters. I do 3 different birds of the Ward brothers in this book, and I do it 3 different ways. One is with all hand tools, a hatchet, spoke shave, and then I do another one with a draw knife and a modern spoke shave. And then I do one with pure power carving. One is painted with oil paints. Another one is painted with oils and alkalids. And one bird is painted with all acrylic. So we get everybody involved is what it boils down to. Everybody can make a decoy. and have fun doing it. And it just happens to be my favorite carvers, the Ward brothers, other than the Smoker brothers, because we have a lot of fun doing it too. Yeah, not together, but we have a lot of fun. But it gives you an idea to see, to visualize some of the things that we're talking about here. The whole thing is getting people to carve. This is all about it. If you've never tried it before, and this is something I stress in classes, and at last report I've had over 3,000 people in classes. If you've never done it, you don't know the joy of it, being able to make something with your hands, and it's just something that you just can't understand until you've tried it, whether it be a loaf of bread or a decoy. So, I mean, it's just, and we're looking at the executive director of the museum here, who's one of the best bakers I've ever met. And she does these things, and she takes pride in it too. And when she carves, I don't really want to say her birds become a bloody mess, but she cleans them before she paints them. Let's put it that way.
A little piece of me is in every bird.
We'll have your DNA for life. Yeah. That's cool.
Another question. I was wondering what the heck you were going to say to me. Another question in the chats to get away from my terrible carving. Peter says that using flat oil paints, they find the finish still too shiny. Do you have any suggestions for a good flat top coat for oil paints?
Well, it depends. I think a lot what your medium is. If you're painting flat. When I think of flat, I'm thinking of Rust-Oleum.
Or Ronin.
Or Ronin, yeah. Ronin paints, they dry very, very, very flat. The only problem with Ronin oil base, which Ronin is a Japanese sign painter oil. It comes from Japan, it's brought over here, and when you paint it, it's very, very flat. The only problem with it is that when it dries by itself, it scuffs. So frankly, when I use Ronin, I mix alkylid, which is a fast drying. They use a different medium in it than linseed oil. They use an alkylid dryer in their alkylid paint so that it dries faster. It'll dry within, with a day. When I'm using Ronin, the flat paint, what I will do is I will add a little bit of some of the other stuff so I get a little bit of a luster to it. I would add some of the flat oil to my Ronin and paint that way. That way you would have fast drying, good adhesion, and you would have a little bit of, you would have a lot more flatness to your paint. I'm thinking that your flat paint, you might be using a different medium. You might be using a turpentine or even some lacquer thinners that will end up shining it. Or if you're using a blending medium, a lot of times those will bring a sheen to your paint. I would recommend if you want to get away from that sheen, get yourself a can of Ronin and try it. It's and mix it in with what you're using now. Like I said, if you use it straight, it'll be flat, but it will scuff if you're making hunting decoys. So, you want to make sure that you compensate for it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, when I do paint with oils, which is very seldom, okay, because I just don't have that kind of patience for me. I like acrylics.
Patience.
I'm good with acrylics, kind of good. But the oil paints, I like to use Ronins as my base. Put it on as a base. Now I have a nice flat base, and then I'll kind of just come over with a thin coat of alkylates. And I'm just like Rich, the same way. Now, that gentleman wanted to know if there was something you could put over top of the oil.
Just to dull it down. The old heads used to do it when they used to use the Modine enamels way back when. What they would do is they put the decoys outside and allow them to be covered by dew for a number of times. And what it would do is it would take a lot of the shine off the paint. I don't know how, but that's what they claimed they did. I know Joe Lincoln did that. I know the Ward brothers did that.
The Habit Grace boys did it when they used to repaint their rigs, put them on the roofs.
Yeah, yep. And what it would do is it would take the shine away from it. So I mean that's definitely a thought. But doing something on top of it to take the sheen away, I mean, there's things you can spray on it, but I don't recommend them. You know, you can take steel wool or even a Scotch Brite pad and try to take some of the shine off. Most of that shine comes from oil paints, you know, will wear off without a doubt. And you have to have the patience to wait for it. If you're painting it for a contest and it's shiny, you know, it's going to hurt for sure. But, you know, you've got to be able to put it aside.
Time will take the shine away.
Yep.
There are a
Yes.
couple other suggestions in the chats for other products. And then we have another question. Says, when carving a decorative bird, do you seal the bird before or after your fine detail work? Then when you finished all your carving, paint it, do you seal it again? Says, please go through the steps as to what you do to become done.
Become done.
Done.
We're well done.
We are DUN done.
Yeah. Well,
You want to go?
No, well, no, you go ahead.
No, you address acrylic.
Acrylics, okay. For a decorative bird, I will seal it.
What do you seal it with before you paint it?
If I'm doing a decorative bird, now it says here before you do the detail work.
Before you do the detail?
Yeah, because some people rub it down with something before.
Yeah, now is that detail work with tools or is that detail work with paintbrushes?
Can you address both?
Yeah, can you?
For an extra quarter.
I'll throw in the quarter.
There you go.
Well, if you're going to, you know.
Well, I think, you know, if you're going to do it before tooling, what it does is you have a soft piece of Tupelo and you want to firm it up.
Right,
You can put something on it to firm it up.
right, alcohol,
Yeah,
denatured alcohol.
right.
usually.
That'll do it too.
That'll do it, and then you do your
detail work.
burning and
Right.
stuff. That is after carving all your feather groups and stuff,
Right.
and after you do your stoning.
Okay. Then now what?
You know, then you put your denatured, then you burn.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But now what?
Now what?
Well, no, he wants to know about.
Oh, okay, once your burning's done.
Right.
And you're all ready, your head's on, everything's ready to be painted, I put on a thin coat of gesso. A very thin coat of gesso to seal the bird over top of that. And normally depending on the bird, I'll mix a pigment with that gesso to
Mhm.
color it. And then I paint over top of that, a thin coat of gesso, I like. If I'm doing honey decoys, that's what I like to do. I use house paint, the exterior house paint.
Hey, big spender.
Well, mist tint is your friend.
Missed
Go
it.
to Lowe's, go to your Kohl's Hardware, go to wherever and go into their mist tint. Find the best I can get a can of a gallon can for $5 of exterior house paint. And that's what I seal my gunning decoys with.
That's a mist tint.
Yeah,
Okay.
mist tint. Detail work is gesso with a little pigment in it. And I never do anything over top of the bird once it's done. I mean, especially on a decorative. Once that acrylic's done, I make sure I do it ahead of time so it dries totally and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I have found, you know, I paint a lot with oil. And like Ross said, once he doesn't put anything over a bird that's been painted with acrylic, a decorative bird, I've seen too many contests at Worlds where they're using gouache. Your Joe Sanya paints are gouache based, and gouache is a water based and is water activated acrylic. And what will happen is they put it in the tank, and a lot of times it hasn't aged. It has to age at least 10 days to 14 days before it becomes hard, and the paint will lift and float around the tank.
Yeah.
We've always picked out those Easter eggs that, you know, have got the white or the black lines
Yeah.
on them. So it's the big thing is once I've done something with acrylic, if it's going to be floated, I'll come back over with my matte varnishes and then cut them. And instead of painting them on, I'll spray them on with an airbrush so I can get an even coat all over the whole bird. And that'll lock down a lot of the acrylic.
You cut that 50-50.
I do, at least 50-50, or I might go 75-25
Okay.
and give it a couple of coats. Because if you go too heavy, it'll get glossy
Yeah.
real fast. If I'm doing oil to seal the bird, once it's been detailed or anything of that nature, you know, Tupelo bird or cedar bird, whatever, I'll use Ronin, and I'll cut my Ronin a lot, maybe half and half, so that it doesn't build up on any type of feather details that I've put on it, and I'll paint the whole bird. And then I'll go into alkylate oil, and I will use alkylate oil mixed with some Ronin, and I will block in the bird for the colors that I want in that area. And then from there, I will go into using tube oil. Tube oil, you can manipulate it to the point where you can dry it a little faster by using some of the dryers on the surf that are on the available to be purchased out there. You have to find the one that you like, best one, and I'll use some of those dryers in the paint. But once I'm finished painting it, I do not seal it, because with the oil paints, you've already sealed the whole bird. It's done. It's not going to take on water.
Someone asks about the ratios at 75 water, 25 matte varnish.
Yes. Yes.
And that's for spraying it on.
Yeah, that's for spraying. I want to make sure that it goes through the nozzle of my spray gun. And I don't mind, putting it on. I'll spray it on and I'll dry it. And then I'll let it sit for a little while, because when you dry it with a hair dryer, you're heating your bird up. And I don't want that heat to be residual before I spray it on again. I'll let the bird cool down, then I'll come back over and give it another coat until the point where it's just on the edge of starting to take a sheen. And I don't want that. But when you look at feathers have a natural sheen. And you want to see that natural sheen. You don't want to see totally flat. Totally flat just shows a bird feather that's totally dead. You want to see that natural sheen, because they put the oil in each feather when they preen, if that helps. So,
Telling of where I learned about decoys, but do you ever use wax in finishing a bird?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Is that a question?
That's my question for me, yes. And then I have questions from
Oh,
the
you
chat.
want a question? When, holy moly. Yeah, we use wax a lot, especially when we're doing the antique style birds.
Oh, antique style.
Yeah. Mix it generally, I'll even mix it with rotten stone, so it actually is as a shining agent and also a polish. So, I mean, yeah, I like to use wax, but I don't use it on anything that's going to be floated, because wax will wash off. But if it's going to float on a shelf, wax is great. You can use some of the stained colors of wax to put it on. I used to use a lot of brie wax, but I don't like brie too much because of the all of the chemicals involved with it. So I'll mix up, I use a lot of Minwax Special Dark, and I can actually melt it on my stove, and I put pigment in it and darken it down myself. So what about you?
I don't use brie wax anymore.
Okay.
It was pulling paint, it was pulling detail paint off.
Yeah.
It
will
reacts with the acrylic paints, it pulls it off. So if I'm finishing with the wax, I even forget the name of the product now. I got it at a Woodcrafters.
Okay.
It's a wax in a jar, and I just buff it on. I am sorry, but I forget the name of it because I haven't used it.
Oh, well, there goes your salary for the day.
My quarterback. Yeah. Okay.
I'd fire me.
Comment and then a question. So the comment is that what you just went over regarding finishing would make a great book, materials order done, decorative versus gunning, etc. So I'll just put that out to you, and maybe Tom Huntington I see here.
Huntington, I know
It says
that
when
name.
painting, do you use an airbrush or traditional brush? Traditional brushes I use. I own airbrushes, don't know how to use them.
Well, it's easy. You set the throttle, you
Yeah.
pull the string.
Right.
I am not bounded by anything. I love to paint. And a lot of times with an airbrush, I'll lay base coats on with it. But I never finish a bird with an airbrush, because it looks too ceramic. The only time I've ever done that is when I redo, when I did my LL Bean cork decoys. I finished them with an airbrush.
Oh.
And that really didn't matter. If a duck gets close enough to see it was finished with an airbrush, he should be in the boat, plain and simple. I like to use an airbrush. I do use an airbrush. I won't lie about that. But I like to finish with traditional brushes, because that's part of the game. A lot of the ones that, personally I love to use are these. I don't know if anybody can see it, but I use a lot of filberts. I use a number of different size filberts, and that's for blending paint. Two colors, one wrapped around the other, and I'll blend it together with the filberts, no matter if it's oil and or acrylic. A lot of base coats I lay on with these, with the brights. So I can, with the straight edges, I can lay a line right aside of one another and then come back in and blend it in with the filberts. And then I use these small rounds for detail work. You know, one of my favorites, I love these Sharps, and I also love this silver Ultra Mini. We used to get the Lowell Cornell 770, there's one, 70 20s, but they are out of print now. They don't have them anymore. They quit. So I've loaded up a bunch of those. And
If you find them, get them.
if you can find
Rich,
them, go.
can you put your hand behind us so we can kind of see? This is a plastic knife, obviously, but you can see the tip a little better. Have you put?
Oh, my hand. Oh, okay, I thought you said.
Not a
my
ham. Yeah, just so you can see
Yeah.
the edges. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, you can see
There's
the
a piece of
rounds.
white paper over there, right?
Yeah, there is. Well, I can do it right on there too. If you can see them.
Yeah, shameless promotion.
Oh, shameless self-promotion. Yeah. But you can see the different shapes. And I find that paintbrushes, it's a personal thing. You find one that you really like and use them. Lately, being that I use a lot of oil, so I use a lot of cheap brushes because once they get bad, I don't care. I'll throw them away. And just use them that way. I had a friend one time who turned me on to these. These are Ebony Splendors from Jerry's Artorama. And you can buy a whole set for, you know, $30 or something like that, or like 8 brushes. So I use those a lot. Does that help?
Thank you. Any
I
other
wish I was
questions?
getting a
Folks? We still have
royalty.
about 10 minutes left. And feel free to unmute yourselves or put something in the chat.
Oh, what was the brush they said, define it, get it here, Rich?
Oh, this one? Yeah. This is a Lowell Cornell 7020. And this is a number 2. It come in, I think they go from 0 up to like 12. It's very, very fine. It's a synthetic hair, very, very tight point. It works great with acrylic. We use a lot of detailing. A friend of mine, Jack Cox, one time turned me on to these, and I have been using them, and Ross has been using them, and
Great for feather splits.
great for detailing feather edges too. I do a lot of feather touches with those, and they work really fine. So if you can find them, Lowell Cornell 7020s. They're good. The only one really comparable that I have found is this one. This is a Sharp 455, and this is a number 1, and I can get a real nice fine line on it. I'm trying to turn myself into using these Sharps, you know, for this model, rather than, because I know the 7020s are going to be gone. So I can't quit carving. I can't quit painting. So I'm going to need something. So
Especially now you put it out there, everybody wants to.
yeah, now everybody's going to want them.
You
Damn.
find a bunch of them, get a hold of Rich.
Yeah. Yeah, like my lunkhead brother who took them all the one time. Yep.
You left them lay out.
Yeah, I left them lay out. There we go. Yeah, can't win for trying. That's for sure. You know, some of the people like to carve, and I tell you the truth, a lot of times the detail carving, these are things that I love to work with. If you can see them, these are rubies, these are flames. I like to use a large flame, medium, and a small flame. I do a lot of feather relief with these. They work really well. But primary, when I'm using a grinder, an NSK mini grinder, this is my favorite now. This one is a carbide a carbide cutter. And this is referred to as the Mueller bit. Keith Mueller turned everybody on to using these, and he hooked me on them, I don't know how many years ago, and I use them religiously. I have 3 NSK grinders at home all set up, and one of them maintains this cutter all the time. I never take it out because this is my go-to cutter. Do you have any that you use the most of?
The Mueller bit's what I use the most of, and then the other one I use, I didn't bring it, is a cylinder. It's a mini one of these, a mini one of these that fits in the NSK
As a cuts all?
as a cuts all, but
Okay.
with a safe end.
Oh, it has a safe end on it.
Safe. And
Okay.
I use that a lot. I have two. I have the orbit in one and the cuts all in the other. And then also like Rich showed the little sanders.
Oh, yeah. Another thing I love to do too is I always thought grandchildren and children were made for sanding. I found out that no, they're not. So what I like to use is I like to use cushion sanders. This one fits in my Fordham. And it takes a lot of the sanding work off of big areas.
Go slow.
Yeah, it's, you want to go slow. You can't go over half speed with a Fordham, or you're going to blow the material off of the sleeve itself. But the sandpaper locks inside of this sleeve, and you put this in the Fordham and you can sand down a lot. Then I use these in my NSK. These are, oops, sorry, Mom. And
Rich has left the building.
yeah, I just left the building. I use these are mini cushion sanders. The sandpaper flip sits inside of a groove. In the very top, there's little keys that you put a key on there and turn it, and you can take the sandpaper off, put a new piece on, slip the key back inside and turn it so it locks itself fast. These things work really good. I hate sanding, but it's a necessary evil, I have found out, but this makes it a little easier on me. So I can use the cushion sanders. They come in many different sizes. So there's a lot of different materials, different tools out there that you can use for sanding. So that makes it something that I enjoy. What about you?
I'm the same way. I hate sanding.
You hate sanding?
Yes.
It must be, that feeling that Dad left with
I
us.
don't hate it. I mean, I know you have to do it, but I'm the same way. Cushion sanders, and I use good 80 grit sandpaper. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
My wife is.
Now she's making faces at us. We get paid extra for people making faces at us.
So, yeah, stuff like that. So,
Oh, this is good.
Literally thousands of students. What's one or two of the most common mistakes that you see novice carvers making?
It depends if I like the person. I tell them that their biggest mistake that they've done is they showed up at the class. No, I think the biggest mistake I find with people in classes is they're afraid to take wood off. In all sincerity, if somebody is starting carving, to take the learning curve to a tighter curve, you come back in and you'll take 5 years off a learning curve of carving if you go to somebody's carving class and learn how they do it. It gives you an idea, because the person wouldn't be teaching a class if it wasn't successful and or professional. You want to learn how to carve. A lot of us are, frankly, I'm speaking for myself, dated. We don't have a whole lot of time on this planet anymore, and I want to get right to it and enjoy this. So, I'll cut right through the chase and try to find out the best materials, the best everything I can do. And that's the same thing with taking a class. You'll learn materials, you'll learn tools, you'll learn finishing techniques, and you get a general idea. So I find the most successful thing I have at a class is when I have students that come and I don't see them anymore. It means that they've learned enough that they feel cognizant that they can go home and do this work, on their own. So I think that's a big thing, really is. What about you?
well, the biggest thing
In your own twisted way.
the biggest thing I found out is that most people, like you said, are afraid to take wood off. So they work a long time. But it's going to come off eventually. So, but the other thing is symmetry. People are not using their center line and keeping that symmetry. So, and the other last thing I would say, a lot of people hate painting, which I don't understand why, because you can always repaint it. Even if you mess it up, you just seal it again and repaint it. It's okay. No one's going to say, hey, you put 3 coats of paint on that. No one cares. They want to look at the finished bird.
Right.
You know what I mean? So paint away, have fun painting. You ask people at classes who would rather get a knife stuck in their eye than paint. You actually have hands come up.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
painting is
Kicking and screaming, people go into painting.
I wouldn't say painting's the funnest thing you can ever do, but if you embrace it a little bit, it's actually enjoyable.
Oh, it is.
And practice a little bit. you
One
know.
of the best examples of painting I've got is I just bought a decoy for my decoy collection to match William Heverin, Bill Snake Heverin. I have a drake, and this was done around the turn of the century, 1900. I found a hen that matches my drake, and I looked at it and I realized it had a second coat of paint on it, which is unusual. It's only 2 coats of paint on an upper bay decoy, but this was a Heverin hen canvas back that he painted himself, obviously when he sold it. But he put the second coat of paint on it. So, I mean, as long as the second coat of paint, the third coat of paint is done by the same individual, fantastic. You know, it's all there. So, I mean, it means the same thing, you know, as long as you can do the work. And practice, practice, practice. Oftentimes when I would finish painting a decoy, I'd be sad because I was done doing it. I wanted to keep painting. I wish I had more birds to paint. So,
Yeah,
and you do the same thing because I've seen you paint. You enjoy it.
I enjoy painting. When I'm in the mood, I go,
Uh-huh.
you know, so. And, but yeah, there's a lot of things that happen. So.
Yep. A lot of things that go on, a lot of things that we enjoy to do. That's for sure.
So, but yeah, we're, that's the biggest thing is taking wood off, keeping cemetery.
Yep, I think so. We, you know, biggest thing I think with carving is enjoy it, embrace it, make something. You know, whether it be a stick and turning it into a bird. I used to sit in a deer stand and make Christmas ornaments. And most of those ended up as little sticks of Santa Clauses or reindeer heads or that sort of thing. And it was the idea that I'm waiting for deer, but I'm enjoying outdoors and I'm carving. So, I mean, that was what it's all about, is enjoy the work. If you're not enjoying the work, there's no sense in doing it. So you have to have fun doing anything.
And I know when I started, I was fortunate enough that I set one night aside a week. I mean, I know life gets in the way, but I set one night aside a week to carve. So I had at least 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours a week that I knew I was going to be working on something.
Right.
So now I'm up to 2 nights a week. You know, that's definite. Now that I retired, I'm actually a little bit more than that. So
Yeah, well, luckily for me this is my job. I come down in my shop and I get to go carve, unless the Ward Museum calls and they need something, and then I've got to listen to that. So, whoa, wait a minute, who said that? Put the brakes on there. But yeah, carving is it's my life. I enjoy all aspects of it. The old decoys, the new decoys, and everything involved. I think that's really what it's all about.
Thank you very much for sharing your wit and wisdom with us here today. And
wisdom, yeah.
no, seriously, thank you very much for doing this. And thank you all for joining us. There are more live Zoom sessions all weekend long, as well as there'll be videos on Facebook and YouTube of studio tours and demonstrations, all sorts of good stuff. So check out the schedule at wardmuseum.org. I'll put my email address in the chat. Also, feel free to email me if you need a link to any of those Zooms. And I look forward to seeing you virtually the rest of this weekend and live in Ocean City next year.
Kirsten.
Thank you.
Yes.
How do I go about getting anything for Tom Christie this afternoon?
Tom Christie is going to be, it's a pre-recorded video that we are going to show live on Facebook as well as on YouTube. And so that block of video starts at 4 o'clock, and Tom's is just a little bit into the 4 o'clock block, I think around 4:05 or 4:10. But so you don't have to sign up for it. It's just going to come on automatically on our Facebook page and on the Ward Museum's YouTube page also.
Okay then, thank you.
You're very welcome. It's in 2 parts. Part 1's today. Part 2 is tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and it's a little bit further into the 4 o'clock block tomorrow. So.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Very good.
Thanks for joining us.
Gold. We're gold.
I think you're good to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. I'll hang out here in case anybody else has questions.
Okay, well, we're still here. And
Tristan.
Yes. Somebody said my name, but maybe they were just saying goodbye.
Kristen, I was wondering about the Living Legend Spotlight that's on the schedule.
Yes, so that'll be noon today, tomorrow, and Sunday. And just like the Tom Christie video, it's going to come on automatically on Facebook and it'll be posted on our YouTube page also.
Okay,
Yep, and I believe we're going in alphabetical order. So Barth should be up first.
mhm. Okay, great, thanks.
You're very welcome. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I guess I'll head out of here, but thank you all again for joining us. We'll see you next year in person.